a brand new year. And maybe many of us are dancing on the ceiling about it because 2020 has been a very challenging year for many. It's interesting because so many people really struggled and found 2020 to be a true challenge in many ways, while other people thrived. Some businesses closed, while other businesses had their best year ever. It's been a very strange and wild year, has it not? I'm hoping that you and your family have fared well so far in this pandemic. It's not over yet, but we are entering a brand new year, and that always gives you the feeling of hopefulness. It makes you want to plan for the next year, the following year. Um, but many people just do a resolution. They don't actually do a real plan. And we're going to talk about that today. And even those of you who are very familiar with what we call SMART goals, we're going to talk about making them smarter. And we also have different words for this acronym that I think suit us better today. And I think that you might agree with me. So just to get started, let's go with the acronym of SMART. Many people in business have heard of SMART goals and have followed what this acronym stands for in order to create their goals. One thing I want to say is that even though many of you are in business and you've done this and you're planning on doing it now, maybe you've already set your goals in motion for next year. Do you know that the majority of people, most people, really do not set a definite goal, do not set a plan for their goals. They don't create SMART goals. And that's why this is so vitally important and pertinent to where we are in the stream of things. So what does the S in SMART stand for anyway? Well, most of you know what it stands for. The other thing is, are you doing it? The S stands for specific. Having specific goals. You know, even though that seems obvious, it might seem obvious to you, of course. However, just a few years ago, I was conducting a group of business owners, and it was January. And so I asked the question, it just seemed like the natural thing to ask, what their goals were for the year. And I expected to hear all kind of, exciting and interesting goals that people set up enthusiastically, And really, in that room of business owners, to a person, I got comments, something like, well, we're planning on doing better next year than we did last year. That's it? Really? What do you do with that? They're all different ways of saying the same thing, but that was the basic thing. Another thing that people find out sometimes is, well, here we are, the end of another year, and boy, it looks just like the end of last year. Like nothing really changed. They feel like they're winding up in the same spot that they were a year ago. How is that possible when we were so busy? How is that possible? I call it treading water. And a lot of people call it feeling stuck. Like you can't seem to move forward. I call it treading water because if you know about swimming, you know that if you are treading water, you're moving like mad. Your whole body's moving, but you're not going anywhere. And your head is just above water. You can go around in circles, but you're not getting across the pond. And sometimes in business, it can feel like that. You're just so busy. You're busy all the time. And you might feel like you're going in circles. And financially, you might feel like your company's just above water. All the time, your head's just above water. Why is that happening? And how can we change it? What shift can we make so that we can begin to stroke the water to get across the pond? Well, one of the ways is to become very specific about your goals. To say that I hope I do better next year than this year, that is not specific. And it doesn't have to just be about business. It can be about other areas of your life. I want to lose weight. Well, I want to lose weight this year. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever said that? Well, how much and by when? Being specific can make all the difference in the progress that you're going to make or not make going forward. The M in the game stands for measurable. Your goal needs to be measurable. And if it's specific, now it can be, because you're starting at a place where you can back up from to decide, well, how much of this and how many of that. If you know how much money you want to make by the end of the year, you can back up from that to see, well, how many clients will it take? How much money per client? How many calls or touches will it require to get each customer, and so forth? You can measure it. And that really speaks to writing it down. It's one of the major parts of goal setting. And it's what a lot of people miss because they have it in their head. I know exactly what I want. It's rolling around in my head. I know exactly what I want. But I have something to ask you when you think about that. Maybe that's where you are. You know what you want, but you haven't written it down because you know. Here's the problem with that. In the first place, there's a quote that says, until you commit your goals to paper, you merely have intentions that are like seeds without soil. And we all know that seeds need soil to grow. So paper becomes to goals what soil is to seed. And if you plant the seeds of thought from your mind onto paper, then it can come to fruition. For example, a builder might know exactly what he or she wants to build over on that lot. They can see the building clearly in their mind, crystal clear. They're specific in their mind. They know how many windows, which flooring is going to go here as opposed to there, even which way the doors are going to swing. Everything. It's not a question. They know exactly what they want. But you and I both know that nothing is going up unless it's laid out in a blueprint. And that's what happens so many times with people. They really have, either it happens that they have a fuzzy idea, sort of an idea of what they want, a general idea of what they want, vague, or they have a very specific idea, but it's not written out. So if you have a goal that's measurable, that you can write out in detail, you are increasing your chances of actually hitting that goal. And that's really the point of creating a goal, isn't it? Is to achieve it. So that brings us to the A. Now, typically, the A has always related to being attainable, as we've always said over the years, that it's attainable. What does that look like really? Is this attainable? Is it not attainable? Who's to say what is attainable? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, everything is attainable, but is it attainable for you? And so today, we like to use the word actionable instead. Because if it's actionable, now you're moving toward it. And it takes action to get traction. So we'll call this actionable. And really, that dovetails with measurable, doesn't it? Because now that you've written it out, you can measure where you're going. You have benchmarks. And that's so critically important when you're shooting for a big goal. You chunk it down into bite-sized pieces. If you're planning to make a certain amount or grow your company or have X amount of employees by the end of the year. Well, what does that look like 3 months from now? Maybe quarterly, maybe month to month, depending on what your goal is. If you have month to month goals, it's actually better because every month leads to a quarter, every quarter leads to half the year, and then finally to the end of the year. And if you are reaching those benchmarks frequently, more often, like monthly, even weekly, depending on what you're shooting for, then you're developing that momentum toward your goal. And you can feel yourself, you're watching yourself march right to your goal. So you want it to be specific, you want it to be measurable, you want it to be actionable. So what does the R stand for? Well, today we really have changed that too. I've never liked the idea that the R in a SMART goal would stand for realistic. Why? You can understand why that has been, the representative word here for so many years, because you do, on one side, want it to be realistic. In other words, I want to lose 100 pounds tomorrow. Well, it's not realistic. However, the problem with that word is that so many people use it as a crutch. Well, I shouldn't shoot for that goal because it's not realistic. So there are a couple words that are used today to replace that in a SMART goal. And one is relatable, and the other is relevant. Is it relevant to where you are right now? Is it relatable to what you're doing? Is it far off the beaten path? If it relates to what your business is and where you're going with your business, or even in your family life or your financial life, then you're creating a SMART goal, in my view, in a better way, because it shifts your mindset. And this is all about mindset. So rather than being realistic, we're going to call it, is it relevant? Okay? And the T stands for time bound. Or to have a timeline around it. Now, why would that be important? Well, it's part of being specific, for one thing. But there's another reason, too. Some of you might be familiar with the Pareto principle, that is the 80-20 rule. And it states that 80% of the accomplishments are made in 20% of the time left to do it. And we've all experienced this. We're working toward a goal. Even the student might be working on a report, and the juices don't really kick in until there's only about 20% of the time left. 80% of that report is done in 20% of the time left to do it. And this just bleeds into every area of life. It's like a fact of life. So knowing this, if we have a timeline, then that right there speaks to almost everything else here. Now you're more specific. We talked about, I want to lose weight. Well, how much by when? Now you've got a date to shoot for. You want to grow your business a certain percentage. By when? It's measurable. And if you have a timeline, now that helps with measuring what you're doing and with your benchmarks, which gives you momentum. As you're reaching and reaching and reaching those benchmarks and timelines, then you are creating momentum in your business. Now, all of this, it speaks to a SMART goal, but I said in the beginning that we are going to create a smarter goal. So let me show you what that looks like. What we're going to do right now is add an E to this. And what would the E stand for? Well, it can stand for a couple things. It can stand for emotion. You know, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, if there's no emotion in the mix, then it's really likely you won't reach your goal. The emotion in what you're doing is so important. What is your why? Why are you doing it? And it can't just be because of a pile of money. I mean, that sits in the bank, and what do you want to do with it? That's what matters more. Is it for? Are you trying to create a legacy? Are there specific things that you're very emotional about, or is it a mission? It could just be a mission that you feel very strongly about because of the way it helps people. There's so many different whys out there. What is yours? Identify it and be passionate about what it is that you're doing. Another word for E right here is to evaluate. I heard somebody say that they make a goal every year. They even write it down and they never look at it again. It just sits on the file cabinet. And then they're disappointed because the stuff that they thought they wanted to do didn't come about. But if you periodically evaluate where you are and where you are and where you are, it gives you the feeling of satisfaction, of accomplishment, and keeps you moving forward. It helps you get the traction we talked about and keep the momentum rolling. So E stands for emotion, to have the passion behind what you're doing, and also to evaluate where you are in relation to your goal. Really, when you think about it, you could say that your goal is like a destination, someplace you've never been before. Now, if you were in your car and you were wanting to go to a destination where you've never been before, what would you do? You'd punch it in the GPS and off you go. Well, where does the GPS stay the whole time you're on the road? Do you tuck it away? Do you turn off your phone before you get there? No, it's in front of you the whole time until you get to your goal, till you get to your destination. And so it would make sense then that once you've laid out this blueprint and you've identified where you want to go and how you're going to get there based on the plan that you've created, keep it in front of you so that you can watch yourself getting there. And that's what the benchmarks help you do as well. So evaluate often. And what does the R stand for? The R stands for reward. Reward. How do you celebrate? How do you celebrate when you hit a goal? Do you celebrate? What happens so often with entrepreneurs is they hit a goal and just keep going because we're always so forward thinking, forward looking. What's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And so that the accomplishment that we made was kind of like a blip, unnoticed. Reward yourself when you hit those benchmarks, even small things. And the reward, it doesn't have to be a big deal. I mean, if it's a small goal and you hit it and you're happy about it, enjoy it. Celebrate that. I don't care if it's just, I'm going to treat myself to dinner. I'm going to treat myself to an ice cream cone, something. Or high five in the office. It could just be as simple as that, just a high five, whatever it is. The reason it's important, though, and it's not a little thing, is we all like to be acknowledged and rewarded for our accomplishments. And if you're an entrepreneur and it's up to you to reward yourself, then do it. Because in your subconscious mind, it is acknowledged as a success. And then you're building a success on top of a success on top of a success. And you're building on that. So now you're creating more self-confidence, and that will bode well for you as you keep moving forward. And even if you're disappointed in things that where you are right now, things that haven't taken place that you thought would, and it just hasn't yet, and you're trying not to give up. C.S. Lewis said, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. And that's what really matters anyway, isn't it? Because all we really have is now, now, now. Whatever happened, happened. The future hasn't happened yet. So this is what we can focus on. Start where you are with the view to changing the ending. So there are so many tools out there to use to help you with your goal, with your dream achievement. So many goals. One, of course, that you would naturally expect me to mention right now at the end of the year is find a coach that can walk right with you, that has been there and done that will bolster your spirits when you're low, because we all hit the skids at times. Someone who can be an empowerment coach for you. Now, myself, I consider that I hold 4 roles as a coach for you, for my clients. Is an accountability coach, because we all have great intentions that oftentimes go by the wayside. And if you're just accountable to yourself, it's easy to let yourself off the hook. I mean, there's always Monday. But with an accountability coach, now every week by week, you're moving forward, forward, forward. And you're talking with somebody who cares about your progress. Also as an empowerment coach. Because like I said, we get down, and when you're down in the mouth, you just don't make those bold actions, those bold moves that you need to make in order to reach your goal. But when you have a cheerleader, that helps you move along. I mean, if it wasn't so important to have someone to be an empowerment coach, a cheerleader, if you will, then why is it there's such a thing as a home court advantage when we're talking about sports? The field is the same, the court's the same, everything's the same, the rules are the same, the game's the same. Why is there an advantage at home? Because of being cheered on by your friends and even cheerleaders. It's an advantage, and it would be an advantage for you as well. And then also as a marketing coach, because you can have the best thing since sliced bread, but if not enough of the right people see it, then you're not going to make the money that you want to make. And then finally, I say as a sports coach. Why would I say that? For business. I say that because much like a sports coach who is not in the game, but always on the sidelines, the coach can see what's going on in the game from a completely different vantage point. He or she can see things that the players can't see because they're in the mix. They're busy, they're active, they're moving, they're concerned with their next best move. But the coach can see that what they can't see. And it's not that the players don't know what they're doing. It's not like they don't know the game, they're not skilled and talented, they are. But it's impossible to see from inside and outside at the same time. It's like trying to look up and down at the same time. Can't be done. So what I thought I would do, mainly because of this pandemic and how it has affected people, and now we're branching out into a whole new year with new possibilities, I'm giving a 75% discount on my coaching for the entire year. It's pretty crazy. And if you want to know more about the details there, just text me or email me, and I'll give you all the details. In the meantime, let me show you this. It is a tool. Like I said, there's so many tools out there. I have one as well. It's called the Steps to Success Workbook. And I can make this available for you as well. It has the wheel of life so that you're working on not just one area of your business, but every area of your life. This shows up quarterly, so you can work on it throughout the year and watch yourself make progress. And there's an article after every month, so 12 articles to help you in your life and in your business. And mainly, there's throughout the workbook places to plan, do, and review, so that you can really work on making progress. To track your progress, it helps with journaling and with benchmarking, all of that. So let me just share with you one last study that was done to really prove to you that writing down your goals is so very important, and it will make a difference for you if you actually do it. Okay, so this is a study, and maybe some of you have heard of it. It was a old study, 1953 study done with Yale University graduating students. This same study has been conducted since then too with the same result, but this is the one I have handy. In any case, 3% of the graduates wrote down their goals. And to be specific, they identified exactly what they wanted, like we talked about. They wrote it down on paper, like we talked about. They spelled out their why they were reaching for these goals. They listed the obstacles that could stand in their way. They identified who could help them, which organizations, who would they have to lock arms with to help them. They identified what they needed to learn. What did they need to know in order to reach their goals? They developed a plan of action, and they established a deadline. 3% did that. Only Yale University students. They all had goals, every one of them. But beyond deciding, do I want to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, only 3% did all these steps. Now, 10% of the students had goals written out, but they didn't go through these steps. Here was the result. In 1973, they followed up with these students, and the 3% who wrote down their goals in detail like that made more than the 97% combined. We call that a clue. Okay, so let me wish you well for the new year coming. I hope that you've done well for this crazy 2020. And please feel free to text or email me if you'd like to talk further. I would love to chat with you. Bye for now. See you next time.